Okay, so I'm looking and sounding pretty rubbish, so let's make this quick, shall we? Hi guys, it's Steffi from the Novelty Corner. Welcome back to my channel. I'm going to apologise for sounding absolutely rubbish today. I'm losing my voice and I'm starting to get a cold and it's not fun. So this is hopefully going to be reasonably quick. I'm not going to spend too long dwelling on plot lines and whatnot, because being vertical and speaking and breathing at the same time is not something that's going very well for me at the moment. I do want to share a couple of things that I have been doing this week, just because they're kind of fun. The first being, I actually got myself a Kindle and I'm so happy to have it, and I actually used it this week for one of the books. So I have my Kindle. I really love it. It's my new toy. I also finished painting the back of my ACOTAR book, so it now has the quote, "Be glad of your human heart, Feyre." I've also started painting my ACA War book, and I'm going to be finishing that off, and hopefully I'll have a really quick video process up on Friday. And I actually got through my copies because I'm painting the ACOTAR trilogy for a friend from book club. Her ACOTAR book is exactly the same as mine. The front of her ACOMAF book is the same as mine, although I did a better job on this one because I learnt from my mistakes. And she had a different quote that she wanted on her book, so hers is a little bit different on the back. And I'm also currently painting her ACA War book at the same time as I'm doing mine. Now on to the reading stats for this week. This is for the week of July the 31st to August the 5th. This week I read 8 books, but don't freak out, you'll see why in a minute. I read 2,369 pages and my yearly reading total is up to 166 books. I am currently, as I'm filming this, participating in the TBR KnockDown24 readathon, which is being hosted by Alex, and I'll leave her Instagram link down below so you can check her out. She's hosting this readathon from 8 p.m. Saturday, so yesterday for me, to 8 p.m. tonight on Sunday. And I read 4 books last night because I picked books I knew I was going to get through quickly. So technically this wrap up features books from the 24-hour knockdown, the TBR KnockDown24 readathon, plus one of those books that I read was for Tome Topple as well. So I'm knocking a few things off my to-do list. The first 2 books that I read this week were Every Word and Every Move, both by Ellie Marnie. These are the second and third books in the Every series. They feature Rachel Watts and James Mycroft, and as I mentioned last week in my wrap-up, it is a young adult Sherlock-esque story set in Melbourne, although the bulk of the story for Every Word takes place in London as Mycroft goes home to investigate his family's death, and Every Move follows on from the events in Every Word. So I'm not going to even go into the major plot lines of them because that would be spoilers. Both of these books were 5-star reads for me. I absolutely adored the characters. It's not often that I have 2 main characters who I absolutely adore as a ship, and I did in this. Mycroft and Watts are just fantastic. They've both got issues that they've got to sort out, and they've got to learn how to rely on one another, and honestly, they're just fabulous. Then I read No Filter by Orla Collins, which was sent to me by Bloomsbury, so thank you very much to them. This is a young adult contemporary book about Emerald, whose mother has just attempted suicide, and her father sends her to live with her grandmother in Ireland while he is busy at work, and her mother is in rehab. There she meets Liam, who is a local boy and who is living his life according to the way his father would like him to live it, rather than following his own dreams. There is a really big social media presence in this book because Emerald is addicted to Instagram and filters and all that sort of thing, and obviously the title, No Filter, is less about filters on photos and more about not living your life through a filter. So not focusing too much on what people think of you on social media and how many likes your pictures are getting and all that sort of thing, and on actually living your life and making choices for yourself and being your best self as well. There are secrets in this book, and there are reasons why Liam and Emerald should not become an item in spite of their attraction. And I was worried at the start of the book that it was a little bit slow and I was really having trouble connecting to Emerald, but once I got sort of halfway through the book, I felt more of a connection for her. I felt a lot more sympathy towards the character, and I really liked the fact that Liam and Emerald both had to deal with problems, and they had to stand up to their parents as well. They had to, no parent is infallible, and they had to call their parents on some things that really needed to be called on, particularly since these guys are nearly adults and they're nearly going out into the world on their own. I gave No Filter 3.5 out of 5 stars, and I'll have a review up on my blog later this week. Steph from the future here, guys, and I apologise entirely for the bad lighting and the angle and the quality of this particular video, but I realised as I was editing this video that I didn't actually talk about the ebook that I read, which I read after No Filter, and I thought I better quickly jump in here and mention it. The ebook that I read was Adamas by Andy Weir, which is his new book coming out in November. And I am a massive, massive fan of The Martian. It was one of my favourite books that I read last year. So I was really excited to see that he had a new book coming out this year and it was available for review on NetGalley. So I asked to receive a copy of it. I did, and I read it. And unfortunately, I was a little bit disappointed. As an action story goes, it's actually not too bad. I quite enjoyed the sci-fi story of it. It's about a colony on the moon called Adamas, and it's a living, breathing place. There's lots and lots of inhabitants there. The main character, Jazz, is a young woman who is not one of the wealthy members of the town, and she's taken on the role of being the city's smuggler and importing goods that citizens in Adamas would like. She becomes embroiled in a big plot and finds herself in a lot of trouble, and honestly, she keeps digging herself a hole. I liked the action sci-fi side of it, and that was all good. So if I look at it purely at that level, there's nothing wrong with it. But what I really had trouble with was the character of Jazz. I really didn't like her at all. I think she was written as trying to be a strong character, and yet I don't think she was. She was quite annoying and juvenile, and there were some things that I think were quite offensive in the book. I mean, if I take a step back and I look at it purely as fiction, I can read the book and I can read it without feeling offended, but there were parts of it that definitely bugged me. So on balance, I've given it about a 3.5, maybe closer to a 3. I'm disappointed because I really like Andy Weir's work and I like the way that he writes. It's really interesting and engaging, but there was just something about this particular character that really, really frustrated me. And because she's the main character and she's the narrator of the story, you don't actually get to see other side characters, which can sometimes pull the book up a little bit. So that was a bit disappointing. Then we come to the TBR KnockDown24 readathon, and these are the first 4 books that I read last night in the first 4 hours of the readathon. They look huge, but there's a reason why I could read these in 4 hours. First of all, I read The Sleeper and the Spindle by Neil Gaiman and illustrated by Chris Riddell. This is one of Neil Gaiman's fairy tale retelling stories, and this is sort of a cross between Snow White and Sleeping Beauty, and it was really quite creepy and awesome. And I have to admit, for the first part of it, I was really confused. I wasn't really sure what was going on. However, I really liked the twist at the end. I really loved the artwork in this. I mean, this cover is just gorgeous. I mean, it's so cool. I love Chris Riddell's artwork. It was dark, it was creepy, it was different, and I really liked it. I ended up giving it 3.5 out of 5 stars just because it took me a while to understand what was happening in a bit of Neil Gaiman style, but I did really enjoy it. Then I read Hansel and Gretel by Neil Gaiman and illustrated by Lorenzo Mattotti. I think that's how you say it. And this one is not really a twist on the fairy tale. It's pretty much the standard fairy tale, but it was really beautifully written. This one's artwork is just dark and creepy and it's just beautiful, and I'm so glad I have this edition of it. Probably not something you'd read to the kids. I mean, Hansel and Gretel's really creepy anyway to read to kids, but this one in particular, the illustrations are pretty creepy. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read Wonderstruck by Brian Selznick, and this I read in about an hour and 15 minutes, even though it's over 600 pages. Those of you who are familiar with Brian Selznick's works know that he writes books in narrative and pictures. So this book is told 50% in illustrations, 50% with text, and it's a middle grade book and the writing is very easy to read, so it's actually very quick despite the size. Unlike in The Invention of Hugo Cabret, where the main narrative is told both in words and pictures, this one has 2 parallel storylines being told. One is being told through the narrative, and that is the story of Ben, who is a young boy whose mother has just died, and he's recently lost complete hearing. So he had partial hearing loss in one ear, and then he's lost the hearing in the other ear, and he decides that he wants to try and find who his birth father was, so he runs away from his aunt and uncle who are looking after him and travels to New York to try and find his father. Ben's story is told in the 1970s, and the second storyline, which is the one told entirely through pictures, is from the perspective of a young girl named Rose in the 1920s. Rose is deaf, and she is usually kept housebound by her parents, who are concerned that the world is too dangerous for a young girl who can't hear anything. As you get further and further into the story, these two storylines begin to converge until eventually we find a point where they meet, and it is absolutely beautiful. I actually haven't read any books with deaf main characters before, and I thought it was beautifully done. Of course, I don't have personal experience with that, but I thought it was very respectful. It was just an absolutely gorgeous story from start to finish, and I highly recommend it if you haven't read it already. The last book that I read was The Princess Saves Herself in This One by Amanda Lovelace, and this is a book of poetry and it's super quick to read. So it's sort of like Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur, except I think I liked this one better. You'll notice I didn't put any tabs in it, and that's because I could have been tabbing pretty much every single page, and I think that's a little bit redundant. So ultimately this book was just really, really lovely, heartbreaking and heartfelt, and if you like this particular style of poetry, then you'll probably enjoy this book. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars, and I think I forgot to say that I gave Wonderstruck 5 out of 5 stars. It was a great read. And before I went to bed last night, I did start the Thrawn trilogy by Timothy Zahn in graphic novel form. I read the first book, which was Heir to the Empire, and I'm going to try and finish that today, so there's 2 more books to read through. So that's everything I read. That's pretty damn good, I think. In the comments below, feel free to share anything about your reading week so far. I love it talking books with you guys. I'm off now to go and have some lemon and honey hot water because I need it for my throat. I hope that wherever you guys are in the world, you're A, not suffering from a cold, and B, that you're having a great time and that you have a wonderful week. I will catch you guys on Wednesday for another video, and I will see you later. Bye guys.